There was a man named John who lived in a calm and quiet neighborhood. His house was small but neat, with a pretty garden in front and a strong fence all around. John liked to keep everything clean and orderly. He was proud of his home because he worked hard for it. Every day he would water his plants, sweep the porch, and fix little things that needed fixing. John enjoyed living in this peaceful place. The neighbors were mostly friendly, and the streets were safe for children to play. One sunny morning, John was drinking his coffee outside when he noticed a new car parked near his house. It was shiny and looked very modern. The car was electric, and John could tell because it had a charging cable plugged into a small socket on the wall of his house. This surprised him because the socket was his outdoor electric outlet. He never saw anyone use it except himself. Curious, John watched quietly from his window. The woman who owned the car was called Karen. She lived just a few houses away. John had met her a few times, and she seemed like someone who liked to complain about things. Some neighbors called her Karen because she often argued about small problems and wanted things her way.
Ow.
John did not know her very well, but he had heard stories day after day. Karen came back to John's house to plug in her electric vehicle. John noticed she never asked him if she could use his electricity. She just came and started charging her car. John felt a little upset, but did not say anything at first. He hoped she would stop after a few days. John was not rich, and his electricity bill was not small. He liked to save energy and pay only for what he used. So when Karen kept using his outdoor socket to charge her EV, it started to feel unfair. John knew electricity costs money, and every time Karen plugged in, it was his money being used. The thought made him feel uncomfortable at first. John thought maybe Karen did not have her own charger or the electricity to charge at her house. Maybe her electric vehicle was new, and she did not know where else to charge it. I wanted to be kind and understanding. But as the days passed, it became clear Karen was charging regularly. She came almost every evening after work and left only when her car was fully charged. John began to feel like his kindness was being taken for granted. He wondered why Karen never knocked on his door or asked for permission. If she had simply talked to him, maybe John would have found a way to help. But the fact that she just used his socket without any word made John feel ignored and disrespected. One day, John tried to find out more. He spoke to a neighbor named Mrs. Lopez, who lived across the street. Mrs. Lopez smiled and said, "Oh yes, Karen does that often. I think she believes the world owes her something. She is always taking from others, but never giving back." Listened carefully. He had not wanted to judge Karen too quickly, but hearing this made him realize that the problem might be bigger than just one socket. He remembered how Karen had once complained loudly about parking or the noise in the street. She seemed to want everything her way. Still, John wanted to solve this problem calmly. He decided to leave a polite note on Karen's car. The note said something like, "Dear neighbor, please do not use my outdoor electric socket without permission. It increases my electricity bill and I cannot afford this. Thank you for understanding." John hoped that the note would make Karen stop. Maybe she did not realize how much electricity she was using. He waited patiently for the next day. But the next day, Karen came back, and once again, she plugged in her EV. John felt a sharp sting of disappointment. It seemed Karen had ignored the note. The next few days were the same. Karen charged her car as if nothing had happened. John started to worry. He did not want to cause trouble, but he also did not want to keep paying for Karen's electricity. He felt trapped. He thought about talking to Karen face to face, but he was afraid it might lead to an argument. Karen had a reputation for being difficult. One evening, John sat on his porch and thought hard. The sun was setting, and the sky turned orange. He looked at the electric socket on his wall. It was just a simple white box, but it had become the center of this problem. John wondered if there was another way to stop Karen from using it. At the same time, John began to notice how other neighbors were watching the situation too. Some whispered to him that Karen was known for acting like this, always wanting things. Without asking, John felt both embarrassed and angry. He did not want to be the only one dealing with this problem. John's feelings grew complicated. He wanted to stay kind and neighborly, but he also wanted to protect his home and his money. He wished Karen would understand respect. He wished she would see that her actions were causing trouble for others. One morning, John decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. He talked to a few neighbors who shared their stories about Karen. Some said she often parked in places she shouldn't. Others said she complained loudly to the homeowners association. John realized Karen had made many people uncomfortable over time. Yet John did not want to turn the whole neighborhood against her. He hoped for a peaceful solution. But deep inside, he knew something had to change. John went back home and checked his electricity bill. It was higher than usual. The extra cost was because Karen was using his outdoor socket without paying. John knew this could not go on forever. He sat quietly in his living room thinking. He thought about how much he valued peace and calm. He thought about fairness and respect. He thought about how small actions could build big problems if ignored. John finally decided he needed a plan. But he also wanted to be smart and careful. He did not want to fight or make enemies. He just wanted to protect his home and his money. As the evening came, John looked outside once more. Karen's car was parked by his house again. She was plugging in the charger. John sighed, but smiled a little, knowing that soon he would find a way to solve this. After John left the polite note on Karen's car, hoping she would stop using his outdoor electric socket, things did not get better. Karen continued to come every day and plug in her electric vehicle just like before. It was as if she had not even seen the note. John started to feel more frustrated. He wondered how someone could ignore such a clear request. His electricity bill was going up, and he was paying for something that wasn't even his. John tried to understand Karen's side. Maybe she did not have a charger at her own home. Maybe she was new to electric vehicles and didn't know what to do. But as time passed, it became harder to believe this was just a mistake. Karen's car was always charged by his socket, and she never offered to talk to him or ask for permission. It felt like she was taking advantage of his kindness. One afternoon, John decided to talk to a few other neighbors about the problem. He wanted to know if anyone else had noticed Karen's behavior, or if anyone else had faced similar issues with her. John went door to door and gently asked people if they had seen Karen using their electricity or if they knew more about her habits. Most neighbors were happy to talk. Mrs. Lopez, who lived across the street, said, "Oh yes, Karen is always doing things like this. She thinks she can do whatever she wants. Last year, she parked her car in front of my driveway for hours. When I asked her to move, she acted like I was the problem." Another neighbor, Mr. Thomas, told John, "I've seen Karen shout at the homeowners association officers because she didn't get her way about some rules. She can be difficult, and she often ignores others' feelings." John listened carefully and felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, he was glad he was not alone. On the other hand, he felt sad that someone in the neighborhood could behave this way. He wanted the neighborhood to be a place where people respected each other. John thought about confronting Karen directly, but he was worried. He had heard stories about how she could be quick to argue and might make a scene. John preferred to avoid conflict if possible. He hoped there was a peaceful way to solve the problem without making things worse. As days went by, John's electricity bill continued to rise. He started keeping track of how much electricity he was using. He learned from his electric company that charging an electric vehicle could use a lot of energy. This explained why his bill was getting higher. John also noticed other small problems. His outdoor socket was designed for light use, like plugging in garden tools or holiday lights. It was not made to handle the heavy use that comes with charging an EV every day. John became worried that the socket might get damaged or even cause an electrical hazard if used this way for too long. He decided to call an electrician to inspect the socket. The electrician came quickly and checked everything carefully. After the inspection, the electrician told John this socket is not meant for constant charging like this. It could overheat or cause a short circuit if it keeps being used this way. You should think about getting a special EV charging station installed if you want to let someone charge their car safely. John thanked the electrician and thought about what to do next. He did not want to install an EV charging station for Karen. She was not his guest, and she never asked. He felt like she was disrespecting his property and time. Meanwhile, Kieran showed no signs of stopping. Every evening after work, her car appeared near John's house, and she plugged it in. Sometimes she even stayed outside talking on her phone, waiting for the car to charge. Other neighbors noticed this too and whispered about it. Some felt sorry for John, while others were annoyed by Karen's attitude. John started to feel a little angry, but he tried to stay calm. He reminded himself that anger would not fix the problem. Instead, he thought carefully about a solution that would protect his home and also be smart. One day, John left another note on Karen's car. This time, the note was firmer. It said, "Please stop using my electricity immediately. Cannot allow this anymore. If it continues, I will have to take action to protect my property." John hoped this would finally make Karen stop. But again, Karen ignored the note. She kept charging her car. Felt like she was daring John to do something. This made John realize that polite notes were not enough. John thought about calling the police or the homeowners association to report the problem. But he worried it might make things worse or cause a fight in the neighborhood. He also did not want Karen to feel embarrassed or angry. Instead, John looked for advice online. He read about similar stories from other people who had problems with neighbors stealing electricity. Some suggested talking calmly with the person. Others suggested legal action. Some even recommended changing the socket so it could not be used without permission. John liked the idea of changing the socket, but he was not sure what kind of change would work best. He wanted something safe and peaceful, but also effective. While John was thinking, the situation started to affect his daily life. He felt nervous every time he saw Karen's car near his house. He even avoided sitting outside in the evening because he did not want to see her charging without asking. John missed the peaceful evenings he used to enjoy. He missed feeling safe and comfortable in his own home. This problem, small as it seemed, was taking a big part of his happiness. One afternoon, John's friend Mike came to visit. Mike noticed John was worried and asked what was wrong. John explained the whole situation about Karen and the electricity. Mike listened carefully and then said, "John, you don't have to let this continue. You should protect yourself and your home. Maybe you can find a way to stop Karen without starting a fight." Mike suggested, "What if you replace the socket with something that looks real but doesn't work? That way Karen will try to charge, but it won't take your electricity." John thought about this idea. It sounded clever. It was not mean or rude, but it would send a clear message. Khan would stop charging because it would no longer work. John felt hopeful. Maybe this was the answer he needed. He could keep his peace and protect his home at the same time. That evening, John went online to find a solution. He found electricians who could replace the socket with a fake one. The fake socket would look the same, but would not give electricity. It was a small device. That would fool anyone who tried to use it. John felt ready to take this step. He was careful to plan it so Karen would not feel attacked, but would understand that she could no longer use his electricity before making the change. John thought about telling Karen one last time, but he worried she would ignore him again. So, he decided to act quietly and see what happened. John made an appointment with an electrician to install the fake socket. The electrician came a few days later and replaced the real socket with the fake one. It looked exactly the same as before, so no one would notice the difference at first. After the fake socket was installed, John waited anxiously. He wondered how Karen would react. Would she notice? Would she be angry? Or would she just stop coming? John felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. For the first time in weeks, he hoped things might finally... After John had the fake electric socket installed, he waited to see what would happen. The next evening, Karen arrived as usual with her shiny electric vehicle. She parked by John's house and took out her charging cable. She smiled confidently, ready to plug in and power up her car like she always did. But this time, something was different. When Karen tried to plug the charger into the outdoor socket, the cable wouldn't connect properly. It felt strange and loose. She looked closer and noticed that the socket didn't seem real. It had no power. Confused, she tried again, but the charger wouldn't work. She pulled out the cable and inspected the socket carefully. But she couldn't figure out what was wrong. Karen looked around, hoping to find another place nearby to charge. but there was no other electric outlet close enough for her to use. She frowned and checked her phone, maybe looking for the nearest charging station, but it was far from her home. She sighed and sat in her car for a moment, frustrated. Word started spreading quietly among the neighbors. Some had seen Karen trying to charge her car but failing. They whispered to each other about the mysterious broken socket at John's house. John, meanwhile, felt relieved, but also curious about what Karen would do next. Over the next few days, Karen returned several times, hoping the socket would work again. But every time, the result was the same. The fake port fooled her completely. It looked real, but no electricity came out. Karen began to wonder if John had changed something at first. Karen thought maybe it was a technical problem with her car or the charger. She tried other outlets in the neighborhood, but none were close enough or accessible. She asked some neighbors, but no one offered their socket. Slowly, she realized she could no longer charge her vehicle at John's house. Karen's mood started to change. She became more quiet and less confident when she passed by John's home. She no longer parked right by the fence, but moved a little further away out of easy reach of the socket. The charging stopped. John noticed these changes and felt a sense of peace returning to his home. The daily worry about rising electricity bills faded. He was able to relax again on his porch in the evenings, enjoying the calm and quiet that had been missing. However, John also thought deeply about what had happened. While he was happy the problem was solved, he wondered how Karen felt. Was she angry? Embarrassed? Or had she understood the message without a direct confrontation? John hoped it was the last, that she learned to respect others' property. Neighbors began talking about the story. Some praising John for being smart and fair, while others felt the fake socket was a little sneaky. A few neighbors said they might have handled the problem differently, perhaps by speaking more openly with Karen. John listened to these opinions with an open mind. He realized that sometimes small actions, even secret ones, could create bigger conversations. He was glad, though, that the situation did not escalate into an argument or fight. In the days that followed, Karen stopped visiting John's house to charge her car. Instead, she started looking for other options, like public charging stations, or installing her own charger at home. John hoped this would teach her to respect boundaries and property. One afternoon, John was watering his garden when Karen walked by. She gave him a brief nod but said nothing. John nodded back politely, but did not bring up the problem. He wanted to keep peace and not start any new conflicts. The neighborhood slowly returned to normal. People smiled at each other again, and the quiet evenings were peaceful once more. John felt grateful that he could enjoy his home without worry. Sometimes, John thought about how small things could become big issues. A simple outdoor socket had caused days of stress, but also taught him lessons about standing up for himself and being careful with kindness. John learned that respect is important in every community. Everyone should ask before using what belongs to someone else. He hoped Karen would remember this too. John felt proud of himself for solving the problem in a way that kept peace and protected his home. He hoped others could learn from his story about setting boundaries kindly but firmly. Life in the neighborhood moved on. John's garden grew greener, and the sun shone brighter. The fake socket remained on his wall, a quiet reminder of the days when a small act made a big difference. After the fake socket was installed and Karen stopped coming to charge her electric vehicle at John's house, things seemed to calm down. The quiet neighborhood returned to its peaceful routine. John finally felt a weight lifted from his shoulders. He could enjoy his evenings without worrying about someone using his electricity without permission. But even though the immediate problem was solved, John found himself thinking more about what had happened. He wondered why Karen had never just asked to use the socket. If she had simply talked to him, John might have found a way to help. Maybe he would have let her charge a few times, or suggested a better solution. But Karen had never asked. She had just taken what wasn't hers. This made John feel a little sad. He believed that respect and kindness should be the base of every community. When people fail to respect others, it breaks the trust that holds neighborhoods together. One day, John decided to share his story with a few close friends. He wanted to see what they thought about the situation and if they had advice for him. When John told them about Karen and the fake socket, his friends listened carefully. Some were impressed by his clever solution. They said it was a smart way to protect his home without causing a fight. Others asked if John had tried talking directly to Karen or even going to the homeowners association for help. John explained that he had been careful. He had left polite notes and thought about speaking to Karen face to face, but he worried she might react badly. He wanted to avoid conflict. His friends understood and agreed that sometimes it's hard to deal with difficult neighbors. Encouraged John to keep being patient and kind, but also to protect himself. John also found an online community where people shared stories about neighborhood problems. Many people had similar experiences with neighbors taking things without asking, whether electricity, parking spots, or shared spaces. John joined the conversations and learned that his story was not unique. Others had used similar ideas like fake outlets or security cameras to protect their property. This made John feel less alone and more confident in what he had done. At the same time, John thought about Karen again. He wondered if she had changed. Maybe the fake socket was a way of teaching her a lesson. But it showed her that actions have consequences. John hoped Karen would learn to respect others' belongings in the future. One afternoon, John saw Karen talking with another neighbor. She seemed quieter than before, more thoughtful. John smiled softly, hoping that this meant she was reflecting on her behavior. He wished for peace and kindness to return fully to the neighborhood. John also thought about the importance of clear boundaries. He realized that kindness should not mean letting others take advantage. Sometimes setting limits is necessary to keep relationships healthy. John felt grateful that he had found a way to do this without anger or conflict. With the problem behind him, John focused on the things he loved. He spent more time in his garden, growing flowers and vegetables. He fixed up his porch and invited friends over for tea. The peaceful home he had worked so hard for was finally his again. John's experience taught him a valuable lesson about standing up for himself gently but firmly. He learned that protecting his home was not selfish. It was necessary. He also learned that sometimes people need to see consequences to understand respect. The neighborhood continued to thrive, and John's story became a quiet example of how to handle difficult situations. His friends and neighbors admired his calm and thoughtful approach. One evening, John sat outside as the sun set. He looked at the fake socket on his wall and smiled. It was a small thing, but it had made a big difference. It had brought peace back to his home. John hoped that anyone who heard his story would remember the importance of respect, kindness, and boundaries. He knew that every community was stronger when people cared about each other and asked before taking. In the end, John felt happy and proud. He had solved a problem that had caused him worry and stress. He had done it with patience and wisdom. Most importantly, he had kept the peace in his neighborhood. After the fake socket stopped Karen from charging her electric vehicle at John's house, things returned to normal in the neighborhood. John felt relieved to have his evenings back and not worry about extra electricity costs. But the experience stayed with him. It made him think about respect, boundaries, and what it means to be a good neighbor. John often talked about the situation with his friends. They discussed how important it is to communicate clearly and kindly with others. Sometimes, people don't realize how their actions affect others. Simple conversation could prevent many problems. John wished that Karen had just talked to him instead of taking his electricity without permission. That one small step would have saved a lot of trouble. John also reflected on how kindness and boundaries go hand in hand. Being kind doesn't mean letting people take advantage of you. Sometimes, setting limits is the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for others. John was proud that he found a way to protect his home without anger or harsh words. He showed that you can stand up for yourself while still being respectful. In the weeks after the fake socket was installed, John noticed something else. Other neighbors began to talk more openly about respecting each other's space and property. They shared stories of small problems they faced and ways to solve them peacefully. The community seemed stronger and more connected. John felt happy that his small action helped start these conversations. Sometimes Karen would walk by John's house. She never looked angry or upset anymore. Instead, She gave a polite nod. John returned the nod but didn't say much. He hoped. She had learned to respect others' property, believed everyone could change if they understood how their actions affect others. John's story soon spread beyond the neighborhood. He shared it in online groups and community meetings.
How many?
People connected with his experience because they had faced similar problems. Some praised his smart and peaceful solution. Others said they learned the importance of setting boundaries kindly. John also realized that protecting your home and property is a way to protect your peace of mind. When things feel safe and respected, life feels better. He encouraged others to speak up gently when they feel taken advantage of. Silence or ignoring problems can sometimes make them worse. Over time, John focused more on the things that brought him joy. He worked in his garden, watched birds, and invited friends over. He felt proud that his home was a place of peace and kindness. The fake socket on his wall was a quiet reminder of how small actions can create big changes. Looking back, John saw the situation as a learning experience. It taught him about patience, courage, and the power of quiet actions. He realized that sometimes you don't have to fight loudly to protect what's yours. Smart and gentle steps can be just as strong. John also hoped his story would remind others to be good neighbors, respecting each other's property, asking before using something, and listening kindly can build a happy community. He believed these small acts of respect make life better for everyone. One evening, as John sat on his porch watching the sunset, he smiled softly. The neighborhood was peaceful again. His home was safe and comfortable. He knew he had done the right thing by standing up for himself with kindness and wisdom. John hoped that anyone who heard his story would feel inspired to protect their own space kindly and firmly. He believed that respect is the foundation of every good community. And when people respect each other, everyone can live happily and peacefully.